I recommend it highly, very important. Okay. Do you want to move it so it's on this side? Would that help? If we're like this? Okay. This is a leaf. Leaves do photosynthesis. What they've done is they've cut a square out of a leaf and showed you what the leaf looks like, that it has some thickness to it. These are cells. These are leaf cells. This is what we looked at under the microscope when we looked at the plant.
They don't break.
The little green dots inside of it,
Chloroplast.
those are chloroplasts. Here's one of the chloroplasts up close. So that little green dot right there, they're showing it to you up close right here. Inside the chloroplast are little stacks of things that look like coins.
Thylakoids.
They're membranes called thylakoids.
Oh, it's down at the bottom.
Thylakoid membrane.
Thanks for pointing that out, Drew.
And it's on the surface of the thylakoid membrane is located chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is a green pigment. Now, this picture is actually screwed up. The only thing in a plant that is green is the chlorophyll on these thylakoids. All this other stuff, like this right here, that's not green, that's really clear. And all this up here, that's not green, that's really clear. The only green parts of a plant are the chlorophyll molecules that are on the thylakoid. Now, what do those chlorophyll molecules do?
Make the leaf.
They absorb sunlight. And, hold on, I'm going to take this down. And they perform a process called photosynthesis. And everyone here needs to memorize the equation for photosynthesis. Here it is. 6CO2 plus 6H2O, that's carbon dioxide and water, yields C6H12O6, that's glucose, plus 6O2. I can guarantee you that'll be on the test. You'll have to know that from scratch.
Bro, what's after 06? Better plus
C6H12O6 plus 6O2. That's the photosynthesis equation. That's the equation of life. That's how these things are all made in the first place. Where did these come from? We learned about these the first few weeks. It's a monosaccharide, it's glucose, it's this. This came from carbon dioxide and water that are put together to make the sugar. And oxygen's just given off as a waste product. And oxygen comes floating out of these chloroplasts.
And we're just lucky enough that we breathe that.
Actually, we evolved, not us, if you go way back, animals evolved to be able to utilize that.
We may still be
because it was
evolving.
present.
Are we still evolving, bro?
Yeah.
Oh, I heard this thing.
I'm not evolving crap.
Some faster than
I heard this thing on the news that like in like a million years or something, our pinky toes are gonna be gone.
Yep.
How are you walking?
They're a lot smaller than they used to be.
Fuck you. Why would they have that on the news?
Okay. Now, why are plants green?
Because they're chlorophyll.
This is called, listen, this is called the absorption spectrum for chlorophyll and other plant. Okay, you have to listen. This is actually in your book on the top of page 223. It shows this graph. And there are actually 3 types of pigments in plants. There's 2 types of chlorophyll, one called chlorophyll A, one called chlorophyll B, and another called carotenoids. And this shows the spectrum of light. Now, you should have learned about this in physical science. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Those are all the colors of the spectrum. White light has all those colors. But this graph shows that chlorophyll and the carotenoids absorb blue light really well. These peaks mean this is absorbed. And they absorb red light pretty well. But one thing they don't absorb is green and yellow light.
So that's what it reflects.
So when white light from the sun hits a plant, the blues and reds are absorbed, the greens and yellows bounce off. If you look at plants, they're mostly green with some yellows in them. Yes, question.
I think leaves are different colors. Like, how come some leaves are like yellow and red?
Good question. In the fall, have you ever seen the leaves change?
Yeah.
In the fall, the plant realizes, it doesn't have a brain, but the plant evolutionarily knows that winter's coming. And the plant will start sucking these pigments out of the leaves to save them in the trunk of the plant to use the next year. And as it removes these pigments, it removes the chlorophyll
The stuff that
first.
absorbs it.
Listen. If the chlorophyll is removed first and all you have left are the carotenoids, well, the carotenoids absorb blue really well, but they don't absorb red and yellow and orange. So the red and yellow and orange bounce off the plant, the blues and purples are absorbed, and the leaves change color to red and yellow. And that's what happens in the fall.
That's tight.
Isn't that cool? Now, an interesting thing, that's photosynthesis for plants. And there it is again. Carbon dioxide and water use energy from the sun, and by a very complicated process, which takes a week to explain, this is formed and oxygen is given off. Again, we'll study that in AP Biology, how that happens if you want to take that. But in regular bio, we're not really going to worry about it, but just understand that the sugars are produced and the oxygen is produced. The sugars are saved inside the plant's body. The sugars are often linked together to make cellulose. That's the cell walls of the plants. The sugars can be changed in formation to make proteins. The sugars can be changed around to make fats. The sugar is the basic source of all the organic molecules we study. So the plant starts with the sugar, and from the sugar it can make proteins, it can make fats, it can make starches, it can make cellulose. Everything can be made from this. So this is the basic process of life. Now, fast forward to animals.
That's backwards.
Let me end this and go to a respiration chapter.
This is gonna be cool.
I don't know that.
What's that from?
Animals, that was Beavis and Butthead. Animals do this equation in reverse.
So do we need to know this one?
Yes. You need to know this one, but it's the same as this one. Let me show it to you. Here's what, so plants do this.
What do you call this?
Plants do this, and what's this called? Photosynthesis. Animals do what's called, do what's called cellular respiration. Actually, plants do cellular respiration as well. So let me put plants and animals. Plants can do both. Plants and animals do cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is when this molecule is taken, C6H12O6. It's combined with oxygen, 6O2. And from it is produced 6CO2 and 6H2O. And
Plus energy.
Energy for cells to use. Oh, I forgot something up here. We needed sunlight. Sorry. So it's the same equation we just wrote.
It's backwards.
It's backwards.
Backwards.
So what's the point? What is this animals are doing? Plants do this too. What happens is, does everybody got this down?
Yeah.
No.
Got it.
Yeah, it's just
Same with the other one.
C6H12O6 plus 6O2, that's glucose,
Everybody-
plus oxygen. This is why you breathe, by the way. It's changed into 6CO2, 6H2O, and energy. So what happens is, plants spend a lot of their daytime making sugar and sometimes storing them.
just like we do.
Animals like us will come grab the plants,
And eat them.
kill them,
It's not nice.
take their sugars, eat them, and the sugars will get inside the body, inside your blood, and go to your cells. So the cells take in the sugars, and the sugars go into your mitochondrions. Y'all remember the mitochondria?
Yes.
Energy for the rest
There's
of
the mitochondria.
It's the powerhouse. So
We called it the powerhouse of the cell, and let me explain. The sugars go into the mitochondrion,
okay.
and the mitochondrion tears apart the sugar.
The
Spins it
glucose.
back out.
And basically, the sugar is a bunch of atoms bonded together,
Glucose.
but the bonds were formed from sun energy. When the plant was doing photosynthesis, the sun energy was used to make this. So when the mitochondria, let me do this please, when the mitochondrion breaks this apart, it's releasing the sun's energy that was stored in this molecule. Remember, energy can change form from one to another? Hold on.
The law of
Now, the mitochondrion cannot just break this thing down. The mitochondrion needs oxygen to do it. So this is why you breathe. Oxygen is breathed in. It goes into the mitochondrion. Oxygen goes in there. Sugars go in there. And together the oxygen and the sugars combine to form carbon dioxide and water. The carbon dioxide is just breathed out by you. Every breath you breathe out some of that carbon dioxide. The water is saved inside your body because cells need lots of water to function. But when breaking apart this glucose molecule with the help of oxygen, energy is released. And the energy gets picked up by these molecules we discussed last section. They're called ADP and P. And the energy that comes out of tearing this molecule up is used to put these two together. The whole point of doing all this is to put ATP together. So, this is showing right here ATP is getting put together. The ATPs then float around the cell and release the energy to different parts of the cell by breaking apart. This ATP that's just formed breaks apart, releases some energy, and allows something to happen in the cell. Like, for instance, one of those motor molecules to move. So, if you think about, I'll answer your question right after this, Hogan. If you think about the motor molecules moving, where did they get the energy to do that?
mitochondria.
Well, it started way back here in plants. Plants absorb sunlight. They put together this molecule. The molecule was then got into an animal's body, was broken apart. The sun's energy was released. That energy was picked up by ADP and P. And then the ADP molecule went to the little arm, broke apart, released that energy, and the arm moved. So, if these vesicles that we studied when we saw these vesicles moving all over cells, the way they're able to do that is from these motor molecules moving. All that original energy came from sugars that were absorbed. So, it's a long process, kind of complicated, but it just involves sunlight the energy from sunlight somehow getting into cells and causing things to happen in cells. And all animals have to eat to get that done. Plants, since they've made their own food, they just simply take the food they just made and then break it down by this same process in the mitochondrions. Plants have mitochondrions too. And so plants' mitochondrions take sugar that they just made, break it down, put ADP and P together, and make ATP that way. Hogan, ask me a question.
Right, so all the energy that comes out comes from like the bonds being broken.
That's
Like,
correct. Anytime you break bonds, energy
And the
comes out.
mitochondrion breaks apart what? The glucose?
Glucose.
Okay, and then from the glucose comes just more energy that is used to put together the ADP.
The energy, when you break this apart, energy comes out, and that's used to put ADP and P together.
Okay.
And then the ATP now, it's called ATP, right, after it's together, that floats around the cell,
It gives away energy by breaking.
and then when it breaks apart, the energy comes back out and causes something to happen in the cell. So ATPs are like little batteries in the cell, floating around, giving energy to various processes.
So you only give the energy when you break it.
When it breaks apart is when it gives the energy out. Did y'all follow all that?
Oh yeah.
Is that tomorrow's lesson?
That's today's lesson. This is all stuff that was done that we do in regular AP Bio, showing, look at this process. This is the first part of the breakdown of glucose. The breakdown of glucose is in 4 steps, and this is the first step. Glucose is broken down into glucose 6-phosphate, which is broken down into fructose 6-phosphate, which is broken down into fructose 1,6-biphosphate, which is broken down into glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, which is broken down into 1,3-biphosphoglycerate, which is broken down to this, which is broken down to this, which finally results in pyruvate. That's the first step of breaking down glucose. That gets glucose broken down in half.
They don't have to memorize that, do they?
Now, they do have to memorize some of the things in here, but not all of them. Just a couple of them.
Why does it branch off right there?
Because that's when this glucose molecule is torn in half,
Okay.
and now you got 2 halves.
It's like each half.
Each half something's happening to, and that's what it's showing.
Is it different things that are happening to it, or just the same things going on at the same time?
The same thing's happening on both sides, but they wanted to make sure you see that. Watch the first part of glucose breakdown.
Cells derive energy from the oxidation of nutrients such as glucose. The oxidation of glucose to pyruvate.
Watch what it does. The molecule is breaking in half.
Can we submit elements on?
No. We're doing photosynthesis and respiration.
There's not a photosynthesis song, so we'll know.
Is there a photosynthesis song you asked for the elements on?
I didn't answer that question.
I think we should take a vote. Whoa, go back. What was that?
That was bread.
Have you seen? I think that was a video where people like walk, red leaves over blue and fall in. Tell the picture.
You baby.
Chlorophyll? More like chlorophyll.
You should get a spot.
Hold on, I wanted to see if I could show you. Oh no, that's not. Okay, so what I want you to do now is get out a sheet of paper, a blank sheet of paper.
You want?
Everybody got one?
Great.
Are those proteins, bro?
This is one of those thylakoid membranes.
Yeah, but are those proteins on the outside?
These are proteins.
And that's a bi-layer phospholipid.
Yeah, that's just a membrane. This is the thylakoid membrane. This is electrons going down the thylakoid membrane.
I knew everything.
Interesting process. It is kind of neat. Okay,
Yeah, I'm
so what I want you to do right now, the process that we just talked about is called photosynthesis. See if you can write the equation of the photosynthesis equation from scratch. Don't look at anything.
Should I turn it off now?
Yeah, you can turn it off. We're just going to practice.